For the second time today, we have a chance to talk to the former CIA Director, James Woolsey. Mr. Woolsey's in the Washington Bureau now. I think you were at home when I first talked to you this morning, sir. Nice to see you again. Just since we have talked to you today, I assume you've spent a lot of time on the telephone. So what have you learned, and what conclusions, if any, are you coming to this evening?
Well, we touched on this earlier, Peter, but I think that there has already been some rethinking in the United States about the World Trade Center attack in 1993 and the possibility that there may have been Iraqi government involvement in that. There's been an interesting book written by Laurie Milroy on this subject. There's a number of government officials who are interested in it. The Clinton administration seemed to think that the World Trade Center and all of the other terrorist operations were either loose associations of people who came together sort of spontaneously, maybe encouraged by a sermon in a mosque or something, to conduct a terrorist operation, or in the later years of the Clinton administration, it was Osama bin Laden. Very little attention was paid to the possibility that state sponsorship of terror might be alive and well, especially state sponsorship by Iraq. A lot of the rethinking of the World Trade Center bombing of '93 has to do with the identity of Ramzi Yousef, who is in prison out in Colorado. Yousef was possibly, not proven, but possibly involved with Iraqi intelligence. If that rethinking of '93 is accurate, then one very interesting thing about what happened today is that this operation is sort of a combination of Ramzi Yousef's two prior terrorist operations. One against the World Trade Center in '93 with the truck bomb. The other, the attempt to blow up a number of American airliners in the Pacific.
You're talking in terms of modus operandi.
Yes. Now, Ramzi Yousef is not sitting out there in solitary confinement in Colorado masterminding all this. If there's an M.O., and this is only suggestive, it's not probative, it does suggest that some of the same type of thinking may have been behind what was going on in '93, '94, '95, and what went on yesterday.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Woolsey, that what we've seen today in terms of these attacks in New York and outside Washington today, an operation that may have been in somebody's mind for a quite a lengthy period of time?
It's possible. It's quite possible that Osama bin Laden was involved in this, and indeed his group did it. But it is also possible that there was someone behind them. And one candidate is the Iraqi government. Outside chance that it was another terrorist group and the Iranian government was involved, I think that's much less likely.
And there's also the possibility at the moment, and forgive me, I mean this in the best, most respectful sense, that you and a whole lot of the rest of us don't really know a darn thing at the moment.
I confess, I have no inside information on this whatsoever. I've been a private citizen for 6.5 years. This is all just reading the press and surmise.
One of the things that caught our attention very much today, in fact, I had an inadvertent set to with Senator Hatch of Utah, who's on the Judiciary Committee, and Barbara Walters talked to Senator John Edwards of North Carolina today. They both gave, can I see Mr. Woolsey, please? Thank you. They both gave the strong impression today that they had talked to officials in the CIA today who said, in the words of Mr. Edwards, Senator Edwards, there'd been real progress made in the very first hours after this thing had occurred. And I express disbelief. What do you?
Well, it's possible that they picked up some intelligence either just before or just after the events that led them to suspect someone or some group, quite possibly Osama bin Laden. But that doesn't necessarily mean he was in it alone.
How good do you think Osama bin Laden is, and how much tendency has there been in the United States government to zero in, to focus in on him, as somebody observed to me earlier today, because we need the face of an enemy?
Well, he's worth several $100 million, and that goes a long way in countries where he's been based in the past, such as Sudan, and has been recently, such as Afghanistan. He has a number of followers. He is dedicated, and he has people who work for him who hate the United States deeply. So there is at least I think, a reasonable chance that on certainly the east African bombings and perhaps some of these other terrorist operations, he has been directly and immediately involved, including the Cole. But it doesn't mean that there's no one behind him working with him, or guiding him, or suggesting approaches, or helping with false identities and travel documents and all the rest. And the prime candidate there would have to be, not proven, but would have to be Iraq, I believe.
Do you sense, or do you have any knowledge that that bin Laden has been anywhere else but Afghanistan? It is conventionally believed that he is protected by the Taliban government, which has led people like the former Assistant Secretary of State Larry Eagleburger to suggest tonight that the Taliban should be attacked directly by the United States if they're found to be complicit in this.
The Taliban has certainly been harboring him, but they may have been his hotel, not, to mix a metaphor, not the Wizard of Oz behind the scene pulling the levers. That role would far more be likely to be in the hands of Iraq than this very chaotic conservative government of Afghanistan.
I don't expect a former director of the CIA to be particularly critical of the CIA today. But I think we believe that nobody in the United States government or its intelligence agencies knew this was going to happen today, or had any kind of an inkling that we have heard a whisper about today. Do you think the CIA and the other intelligence agencies in the country as good as they need to be?
No, they're not as good as they need to be. I think they're the best in the world, but they're not as good as they need to be, because in this business you have to be perfect. It's like playing goalie on a hockey team with any goal scored against you being absolutely deadly. You have to stop everything. And the CIA and the rest of the intelligence community and the FBI did a good job back around the time of Y2K in stopping several terrorist incidents, and they've stopped a number of others that have not been publicized. But you have to stop them all, and you need enough good intelligence to be able to either stop them or help other people, law enforcement or the military, stop them, and this one was a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Now, Mr. Woolsey, we're grateful for the time that you have given us today and the knowledge that you bring to this subject. Thank you very much. I hope you won't go too far away, or at least we'll know where to find you.
It's good to be with you
in the hours and the days ahead.